So I think dividing a negative number by negative 1 is a little bit easier to understand than positive. I'm going to show you why. Again, let's just think about the fact that if I have a multiplication problem, I can rewrite it as a division problem where the product, right, is actually the numerator, and then I can either put a 3 or if I put 4 here, then 3 goes over here, or I could switch them. 12 divided by 3 equals 4. Either way, you can see that each of these problems can be rewritten and changed from multiplication to division and vice versa. And the same can be true for dividing a number by negative 1. So let's look at the simplest. Negative 1 divided by negative 1. Well, let's just pretend we don't know what the answer is yet. Well, if this is our numerator, then this is going to be our product down here. And negative 1 times whatever is going to be going on the left side of the equation, or the other side of the equation. So let me ask you guys, negative 1 times what gives you negative 1 back? This is real simple, right? It'd have to be positive 1, right? Because if I started with negative 1 and ended up with negative 1, I must have multiplied by 1. So therefore, the answer to the original question is positive 1. So we've shown that positive 1 divided by negative 1 gives you positive 1 back. A positive divided by negative is a positive. We can do the same thing for negative 3, and we can show that we've already shown that a negative 1 times a positive 3 gives you a negative 3 back. So therefore, the answer to our original question was positive 3. Again, we're showing that a negative divided by a negative gives you a positive back. We do the same thing for negative 9. Negative 9 divided by negative 1 gives you positive 9 back. Now, the reason I think this is easier is because you can imagine if you add negative 1 9 times, then that's negative, that actually gives you negative 9 back, right? But and therefore that's and because I added it 9 times. Sorry, I got a little confused. How many times did we add this? We added it 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. The number of times we added is going to be our answer. Remember, division is just how many times does something add up to give you a certain number. So we added negative 1 9 times, and we got negative 9, which was our numerator. So in general, we can show this for any number. If we take any negative number and divide by negative 1, we get the positive of that number back. So when we divide by a negative number by negative 1, again, we get the positive version back. Again, this is important because it comes up so often. I want it to click for you. I want it to make sense. I want you to understand why. If you have any questions at all, please just let me know. So negative 9 divided by negative 1, we just showed that. It's going to give you what? Positive 9. Again, we talked about this rule in the in a previous lesson. If I'm taking a negative and divide by something, I get a positive back. And that means since the sign switched, I must have divided by a negative number. In order to switch a sign when you're dividing, you have to divide by negative 1. In other words, if I took a negative divided by positive, it would stay negative. Okay, what number divided by negative 1 gives you positive 1.7? Well, again, it must have been a negative number. Negative 1.7. Okay, how about negative 50 divided by negative 1? Again, if I'm dividing by a negative number or multiplying, then this original sign must flip, right? So it goes from negative to what? Positive. So once you understand, that's how math kind of works. Once you understand why something is true, you can then begin to look at shortcuts and quick ways of doing a problem. And the shortcut for this one is, shortcut for this one is, try this one more time. I'm dividing by a negative number, so I know the original sign must switch, so it becomes 50. But sometimes in math we jump into the temptation, well, I'm just going to learn the shortcut, I don't want to understand why. And at the end of the day, you're going to end up confusing yourself, and you're going to eventually forget that rule because you don't know why it's true. And that's true for anything in life, whether you're studying history, English, whatever. You need to know why it's true in order for it to really click and make sense. And again, just as a refresher, simplify means to shorten or to make simpler. So here I have a negative 5 and I'm dividing by negative 1, so the sign switches, right? Therefore it becomes positive. And again, you could put the positive there, but you don't really need it. You can just write 5 because that means positive 5. How about negative pi divided by negative 1? Again, the sign's going to flip and become positive. So once you understand the concept, you can use these shortcuts and get the problem done really quick without really thinking about it. So I'm dividing by negative 1s, therefore this original sign is going to flip and become positive y. Okay, negative mn divided by negative 1. So guess what? This sign's going to flip. I don't have to do much work. It's going to become positive, and therefore my answer is positive mn. And again, we've already seen this example, but this is the rule. I have a negative number divided by negative 1. The sign's going to flip. No matter what that number is, it's going to become positive with that number, which gives you positive a back. That's it for this lesson. Again, this lesson is titled Dividing a Negative Number by Negative 1, and we look at it because even though it is simple and trivial for some people, it shows up often and it really needs to make sense to you.